Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Into the Arena podcast. I'm Sean Corcoran, the CEO of Men for Life. I'm here today again with my co-host, Andrew Wood from AHW Ministry Advisors. How are you, Andrew?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Why don't you say your name, since I butchered it, why don't you say your name and your organization or your ministry so that so there's clarity for people who are listening. What the heck is Sean talking about?
No, AHW Ministry Advisors is something brand new that I'm working on, and working with consulting and strategic planning, speaking, writing, and just kind of bringing it all together, helping nonprofits and ministries, churches, pregnancy centers, and so AHW. That's just my initials. So there's that's it. But yeah, man, glad to be here. I know you were in DC last week, and I think you had to stay one extra day. I told you. I think if we go back and listen, I think I said prepare to stay at least one extra day. So I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think you did stay an extra day, and it's been cold here in Tennessee, and I know you were. Y'all had more snow in DC than we got here, but man, it's been cold.
Yeah, I walked outside today in Louisiana where it was 48, and
oh yeah.
And I was like, man, this is the hottest day this week, and I'm freezing. So I'm glad I'm not where everybody else is. I know that the Chattanooga March for Life had to get postponed because of the weather and everybody not being safe. And I know it's not just Tennessee that's facing this. So we offer up prayers for everyone in our country who's dealing with the weather issues, because it's crazy. Ours wasn't that bad, getting stuck in a fairly nice hotel with a ton of snow outside and no people in it. So John Francis got to go outside and he built a legit igloo.
That's awesome.
I haven't posted that picture on social media yet, but I'm going to. It was really, really cool. I was out there with him for about 25 seconds, and then I just went inside and watched through the window. He stayed out there for like 3 hours building this igloo. Had a blast. It's more snow than he's ever gotten to play with before.
Yeah, DC, man, they shut down when it snows. And so the last time I was up there and it snowed a ton was around a March for Life. And it was like so eerie because there was no people. Everybody was inside. There was no vehicles moving. I helped a news reporter. She fell. I helped her get up. It just was like, yeah, it's really strange to be in a large city and not see anyone and just see snow everywhere. But I'm glad your boy got to enjoy the snow and play in it. And our kids my oldest son went to a friend's house and they rode 4-wheelers and had a blast. And so all the girls were home with us, and our girls went out for maybe 20 minutes and they were in the house the rest of the time. So it didn't, so when the world says there's no difference between boys and girls, I can just assure you in the Wood house, there's very much a difference in how they enjoyed the cold and the snow.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. I'm glad all the kids at least are getting to have fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So DC was a great experience. I felt very empowered with Men for Life. To be running an organization with a mission to change the culture by restoring authentic masculinity, and to be invited into all of these places to participate. I got to speak on Thursday at the Pro-Life Advocates Conference, which was put on by the March for Life and the Leadership Institute. And then I was given backstage VIP passes to Life or Death Con that the White Rose puts on, and to the Pro-Life Summit that Students for Life and the Vitae Foundation put on. And then, of course, at the march on Friday, I was John Francis, stood 50 feet away from Vice President Vance.
That's awesome.
And I couldn't get through because I would have been blocking everybody's views. But I just said, hey, you just make a hole and go. You're not going to be obstructing anybody. And so people just let him go, and he got to stand right up in front of the stage. And then he and I got to stand on stage, with what they call the coalition right before the march started. So it was a really cool event. He got to get pictures with Nick Freitas and Lila Rose, and and just he felt really special. I did too, but for an 11-year-old, I think it was a really cool thing. So he says on Wednesday, before the Thursday presentation, the Dina, the lady who was putting on the Leadership Institute, the Pro-Life Advocates Conference, sent an email, and it said, people must have been asking, how do we dress? And she sent out an email and she said, just dress on brand. Whatever you normally wear, dress on brand. If you wear a pro-life
Hmm.
t-shirt when you talk, wear a pro-life t-shirt. And I'm reading this to John Francis and my dad, who was with me in the hotel room. And John Francis said, what does that mean? What does it mean to dress on brand? And I said, well, your mom's a dentist. And so if she was going to go and she was going to give a presentation, what would she wear? And he said, she wears scrubs. And I said, that's right. So what do you think? That's her brand. Like, her brand would be wearing scrubs because people can identify that. So what do you
Right.
think I should wear? And he said, a giant baby costume. I like the people there too much and appreciate my own reputation enough that I did not do that. But I
Yeah,
just
you would
thought
have
it
definitely
was,
stood out.
yeah, I would have. Big hairy baby, man. But and I think everybody else appreciated that I did not wear a giant baby costume. But
Yeah,
I love the way that kids think, because that's what we're doing, right? We're saving babies. And so
that's right.
for him to understand that, it was just funny.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to. We're not gonna harp on this a lot, because there's a lot of conversations to come. But I do want to touch on just kind of my experience and what I wrote on Substack and posted on social media about about division, and just kind of where that came from, and where that conversation's heading. It kind of came from some very, and we talked about this last week, but this was different. Some very strong, very emotional, very drawing a line in the sand statements from Abby Johnson at Life or Death Con. Some of which I agree with, some of which I do not agree with. I do not agree with the criminalization of women. I do not believe that our country is at a place where that makes sense. I disagree with her that no women are victims in this, because I have spoken to women who are shocked to see what the abortion industry would call the product of conception, but when they're
Hmm.
shocked to see what they were told would be a blood clot has eyes and arms and fingers and toes and legs, and they're literally shocked and appalled, and it changes their whole life. So no, um, I disagree with the statement, and I reject the idea that there are no victims in this, that women are not victims in this. I do agree with her that not every woman is a victim.
Hmm.
But the most important thing that I agreed with that she said was, I want to end abortion today. And I think that's a really important idea that we should all be thinking about. When we talk about fatherhood, and my goal every day is perfection. I will never achieve it, but my goal every day is perfection. And I think sometimes in the pro-life movement, we say things, and I'm guilty of this, like we're not going to end this today. We're not going to end this tomorrow. I think I said on Thursday to people before I heard this talk that the reason that I believe we need to change the culture with Men for Life is because if men lead, then the next generation will see that and follow, and they are the ones that will end abortion. And I think that that's a misguided way to look at it, because if I'm only looking at we will end abortion by changing the next generation without trying to figure out how do we end abortion today, then I'm losing sight of the potential of God, right? That while I think it may be impossible to end abortion today, like, I mean, I was a homeless drug addict, and then I was an attorney, and now I'm running a pro-life movement. Like, nothing is impossible with God. And so I think we need to be aware of the power of God to do whatever God wants, in that if every day we wake up and we say, I'm going to end abortion today, I'm going to end abortion today, I'm going to end abortion, one day we will do it, But if we wake up every day and we say, abortion's going to end in 5 years or 10 years,
Hmm.
then we're just pushing it off indefinitely. And so that was a really powerful moment for me. And I'll link the article that I wrote in the show notes because I don't. We've already discussed that we're not going to talk about all that this morning. But the big thing is when I wrote it, I made clear what my positions on several things are. And I texted you this before or right when I
Hmm.
posted it, and what I predicted happened. After I posted, I was accused by people on each side of taking the other side, and I was thanked by people on each side for taking their side. And so in effect, that was my goal because that's where I lie. I think there's truth in everything, and that we need to have the conversations, and that's something that you and I were talking about a minute ago. Is whether we agree or disagree, we need to have the conversations.
Well, and that's I mean, that should be the heart of who we are as gospel centric, biblical worldview folks. We don't run from, yeah, it's like when there's some folks within kind of churchdom that says, oh, don't get involved in culture wars and all that. I'm going, well, then go read your Bible, because the Bible, Daniel got involved in some culture wars. Paul got involved in some culture wars. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were like, I'm not doing the thing you tell me to do. Throw us in the fiery furnace. Like, we believe God will save us. We believe he can save us. And even if he doesn't save us, we're not bowing to you. And so I do think there's elements where we have to stand up and be strong. But the thing that's frustrating me at times is social media is designed right now to create division. And usually that division is created from the left and the right, Democrats, Republicans. You kind of can see the line, like my feed is saying one thing, somebody on the left, their feed is saying one thing, and it's feeding them that thing to keep them angry about everything. And what I'm finding now is it's like the algorithm has said, you know what? We can even cause division within the right. We can even cause division within the left. And that's what you're seeing even within the pro-life movement. It's saying, well, here's my core convictions, and this is what I believe, and you're not pro-life enough, or you're not, or you're too pro-life. If that's even a phrase. And so we're going back and forth, and it's like, y'all, we're getting distracted. The enemy is being successful. When I say the enemy, the spiritual, the serpent is being successful in distracting us from the main thing. And so I think what we've tried to model, and I know you've done this because we've talked even offline about text and phone calls that are happening. Like if I see something from someone that's of concern, or I'm like, well, I don't, where is that? I will reach out to them and I'll have a conversation and we'll talk about it. And often what happens is something was taken out of context, or we get a little bit more clarity on where they stand on this or that. And I'm like, okay, you know, that works for me. And I've had people do that to me. I've commented on something, and friends of mine have reached out and been like, hey, can you provide more context into that? Because I don't want to read into it something that isn't there just because you commented on a certain post. I don't want to assume you believe X, Y, or Z. Like,
Right.
that's how Christian brothers and sisters should operate. I got emails in my inbox right now that I'm going to get on phone calls this afternoon around this, because we're trying to bring clarity and trying to bring some folks together to have conversations. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to walk out of that room and agree on everything.
Yeah.
But the reality is, most of these, especially within our movement, most of folks are going to agree on 90+% of things, and the things we don't agree on may be like, uh, a specific word that they use, or they're talking about their own story, and but I take it personal because my story is similar, even though they're talking about themselves in that moment and not me. I'm gonna take it as if they're talking about me.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we make stretches that way. And so I just think we're at a time where we don't need more division on the right. We have plenty of that when it comes to policy and the politics of it all. We need to figure out and get in rooms with each other in the pro-life movement, and be able to have these conversations. Sometimes hard, uncomfortable, uh, but understand we're on the same page. And I think the difference between my prayer is the difference between that division versus division on the left is we're calling to the same God the same value system, so we can come together and go, let's wrestle through this and come to an understanding. At least we can come to an understanding with each other, because you claim to be a disciple of Jesus, I claim to be a disciple of Jesus. That requires something of me, that requires something of you, so let's have this conversation. And that's not me. I think sometimes when folks say that, it's like, oh, kumbaya, you don't have any convictions, you're not standing firm on things. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying get in these rooms and have strong convictions, and and
Right.
and and be willing to say the hard thing. Because what I think sometimes happens, and we talked about this offline, is they're not willing to say that when they're, sitting with each other. And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to, I've said in marriage counseling for folks before, and I've walked out and gone, I don't know what you want me here for, because y'all are clearly not willing to own some of the things and the problems that you have that everyone can see. So if you're not willing to own some of that and say these hard things in this setting with a mediator, I'm not really sure you're going to be able to do that outside of that. And so that's my hope, and hopefully, I hesitate to even say this, but hopefully we can be a part of that, and help bring folks together to have some of those conversations, because I do think I think it's so needed, for sure.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what I'm taking from this is God has put it on my heart for a series in the Men for Life podcast, the interview part of the podcast, where I'm going to call it something like, what is the pro-life movement? What should the pro-life movement want? Right. I'm stealing that from Nick Freitas, who did a series called What Should the Right Want? Where he interviewed people with different perspectives. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to interview Abby on February 24th. I'm starting next week with Daniel Breeden, with our friend with Tennessee Right to Life. I understand his position, and we've talked about it a lot. David B. Wright, who is probably the most well-connected pro-life person that there is gonna join me, and I'm gonna get some other pro-life leaders together who are gonna have different perspectives, and try to figure out, like, hey, what is it that we should be working for? And I have a feeling that everyone is going to say for the end of abortion. But then how are we working to get there? What is it that what are we going to do to get there? And have these conversations, because I think it's important. And one of the things that you and I talked about before we went on, and I think this is an important thing for anybody who's positioning themselves for people to listen to, is that, we are aware that there are, and it's not just pro-life, but let's talk about pro-life. There's leaders in every aspect who, people hear what they say and they follow. I mean, look at Trump, right? Like there are people who, if Donald Trump says something, there is a portion of the population who will absolutely 100% believe everything he says and do whatever he says, regardless of whether they have any thought behind it at all, right? And it's important that we, and our goal is to have the conversations to encourage people to think for themselves. And I think that we've lost that a lot in our society. And I think that's kind of gets us into what we said we were going to talk about, which is, is the division in the pro-life movement, you touched on this with the social media, but is the division in the pro-life movement right now, and the way that it's being handled, really just reflective of the greater division in our country and the way that that's being handled?
Yeah, I think the even as you were talking, I saw a clip from 2008, I think, Hillary Clinton speaking about immigration, and I mean, she's at a rally and she's saying, if you are here illegally and you're a violent criminal, we need to deport you today, immediately. And the crowd erupts in cheers. That is not that long ago.
Right.
But she would say something very different today and would get millions of votes today if she ran for office. And so again, I think you can go back to that time, Obama and his statements on marriage, and people cheer, and he flips completely, and so I think what you see in the political world, and God forbid, I think what you see in movements in general, is some people are just really good communicators, And so they lick their finger, they put it in the air, and they see which way the wind's blowing, and then they attack, or
Yeah.
they put all their eggs in that basket, and they rally people around that. And so I think what we're seeing across the board is first off, we were not built as a society and as a human to carry the burdens of the world like we do today. And so what I mean by that is what's happening as Christians, we should care about what's happening around the world in different cities and all that. But because of our social media feed, we don't just care about it. Now we take it personal, even though I may have never been to that city in my life and
Right.
met anyone from that place in my life. Now, what I'm not saying is I don't care about them because, of course, they bear the image of God. But what I'm saying is you are not designed to carry the weight of that burden all day long. I mean, I got friends right now that if you go look at their feed, I'm like, did they move? Are they now living in a city that I'm not aware of? No, they've never been to that city.
Right.
But that is what's taking every ounce of their being. And again, social media is designed for that. Like that is the folks that put it together will say that's how it's driven. It knows what you like and what you care about, and it's going to put it in front of you and get you riled up. And so as we're seeing that division now friends that I was friends with, or people that I know, or family members, I never really knew where they stood on things because it never came up in conversation.
Yeah.
Now I literally know everything. And so now when I'm interacting with them, I don't see my family member, I see fill in the blank issue.
Yeah.
And so now in the pro-life movement, you don't see a fellow pro-lifer, right? You see a abolitionist or a
Right.
non-abolitionist or somewhere in the middle, or exceptions, or you see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we get to this place of I can't see you as a co-laborer now, because now I know personally what you believe and think. And so now I can't even get past that to have a conversation. And I'm just saying the reality is a lot of these folks had these positions when we used to talk with them.
Yes.
So why don't we just talk with them and have those And I know we talked about this last week too, of just the conversation is more conversation the better. And we had some folks reach out to us even after last week's episode, thanking us for that and
Yeah.
sharing some information, because again, we want to see the ball move down the field. Like our goal is not to just simply be talking heads that don't do anything. We have to get to a place where are we locking arms with folks that can move the needle, understanding that there may be certain things we disagree on. I got friends in this movement that are super charismatic, speak in tongues, do all the things. I don't do those things. But I considered some of them my best friends, not just in the movement, but in general.
Yeah.
So we can get past some of these the way we worship on Sunday and things like that, to a place of saying, hey, let's not take everything so personal. Let's have a conversation. If I say something about me, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily saying it about you. Uh, and then when we're close and have relationship with people, being able to call them on their nonsense and saying, actually, you did overstep there.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it. I think that's how friendships flourish, and that's how movements flourish, is when we can all say, what's the ultimate goal. And I think that's what you're trying to get at. And I think what hasn't happened in the past is people getting in a room and saying, how can I help you? How can you help us? It's been, well, this is my thing, and needs to be the voice. This needs to be the platform. This needs to be the mouthpiece. Instead of going, like Moses said, actually, I have some insecurities, and surround me with folks that can help in that. So do you see that in leadership today, where people are saying, actually, Aaron could really help me with this. I'm going to
Yeah.
bring him in. because this is kind of his lane and my lane is this. And like, I would love to see, we've tried that in different aspects, but I don't think it's ever been done super well,
Yeah.
to be honest.
I think the whole, if you're not with me, then you're against me, thing is more harmful than it is helpful, because then we can't figure out who's the real enemy. In the pro-life movement, if we should be fighting against abortion, and you said something last week, and I rewrote it in what I wrote, that if if you are pro-life and you are sitting next to Planned Parenthood in opposition of any pro-life bill, you are sitting in the wrong seat.
Yes.
Like Planned Parenthood is an arm of evil. If you are sitting next to them in opposition of them, and you are not thinking, what am I doing and how did I get there and why am I sitting in this seat? I need to go to the other side. Then you are not thinking clearly. And so, and I think that a lot of times in this country right now, especially, people are not thinking clearly. People are not thinking, and you bring up social media, and, and it's almost as though the people we used to have conversations with, that now we're not having those conversations. It's because nobody's having conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their entire worldview is being formulated by social media, and on social media, and it is hard to see some of the things that come across my feed, because I am so intentional about not blocking and not removing things that that I disagree with, that drive a negative emotional response. And sometimes I'll see something and I'm like, what the heck is this? Like this is absolute crap. And I can't believe this. And I have to force myself to not, to not block it. And many times I force myself to read it. So I'll keep getting that, because that's what the other people are getting. And it's important to see that this is happening on both sides, and I've had, I get a lot of vile stuff,
I've seen. Yeah.
Sometimes I post it. I got people who want my daughters to get raped, so that and my wife, so that I can understand what it's like. And these are the tolerant people, and and people who want me to unalive myself or paint my ceiling red, and so most of the things that come across don't bother me at all. And what's fascinating is that lately, I think I mentioned before we started recording, that many times I'll have this idea in my head, and I'll give myself about 10 seconds to stop myself from doing something completely irrational, and then I'll do it anyway. And so yesterday I posted something about Alex Preddy. And it was really just like a list of things, like that these things can all be true at the same time, right? Like that,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't remember the whole thing, but basically, like the fact that the guy, like, stop showing me that he kicked a tailpipe, a week later, like that doesn't justify him getting shot the next week, like it just, that is not a justification. And that's what I mean when I say stop showing me. Like, stop showing it like, hey, this is who this man is, therefore he deserved to die, because that's not true. Like that is not Christian, and that is not biblical, and that man did not deserve to die 1 week later because he kicked a tailpipe the week before. But the big picture, moving through the rest of the list, if he wasn't there, then he wouldn't have gotten killed. Like, even if it's ISIS' fault, right? And the investigation will find what the investigation finds. Even if it's ISIS' fault, if he wasn't present, he would not have gotten shot. Like, that is objectively true. And to get pushback on things like that, I had several people who disagree with me on a lot of political issues, who said, thank you. And I had Monica Snyder with Secular Pro-Life she said, thank you, but I would add this. And she took a position from the other side, all statements that also could be true and don't make any of my statements negative. And I said, yes, all of those could also be true. Like, I agree. And then I had people who I went to law school with, who I haven't talked to in 15 years. Like they just assume that I'm this, MAGA hat wearing, gun toting, like Trumpist Republican that is blindly following him because I'm pro-life. And that's not true. And so, but the problem is they come at it from this perception that's not real, and the things that they then say are from that perspective that's not real, and it's just nonsensical. And these are people who I know are incredibly bright, and so I just kept saying like two things. One, like this is someone who does not trust Trump, but who keeps saying that Trump is the one who can de-escalate this.
Yeah.
That is a disingenuous statement.
Yeah, we hate you. Now fix it. You know,
Yeah.
it's a weird
If you
thing.
think Donald Trump is the most horrible person in the world who has created this situation and will never do anything right, and you're then telling me that you're relying on him to fix this, you are lying to me and yourself. And so who is in the best position to fix this? You know, the people that the protesters will listen to. And the people that the protesters will listen to, I believe, are the leaders in Minnesota. And so that was my position, is that, look, they'll listen to them. If they tell them to get out of there, they'll get out of there, because these people are not equipped and they are not ready, and they do not understand that this is not a simulation, and that you cannot pick up a flashbang grenade and throw it back at an officer without blowing off your hand. This is not the Running Man, you know, and the mental gymnastics that people go through. I mentioned to you that I finally just said, you know, in talking about leadership, would you lead your family to violently oppose law enforcement? And you know, and it kept going around and going around it. And I was like, I'm not responding to any of this. Would you lead your family and friends to violently oppose law enforcement? And he said, well, my daughters are 3 and 5. Like, he thought I was saying, would you take your children to a violent protest? Which obviously is not what I was saying or what he thought I was saying. He just can't get to the point of saying no. You know, I am a 6'1", 230 pound white male who lives in a very nice neighborhood and is not scared of the police at all. I was taught growing up that you do not interfere with law enforcement. You get pulled over, you be polite. Like, you know, all the white privilege you want. But I learned, even in this position, that this is the way that you talk to and respect law enforcement. If they then violate something, you fix it, right? Through the proper channels. But you do not get up and punch them or kick them or throw things at them or spit on them, because they will win. And we are refusing to acknowledge that reality when we do not say that these people need to calm down and back off, because yes, there's tear gas. I don't even care whose fault it is. Yes, there's tear gas. Yes, there's flashbangs. Yes, there are masked men. Like, so lead and tell people not to go into that situation.
Well, and here's the thing.
I wrote about it back and forth for so many hours yesterday that I had to get all that out.
Well, and none of those things would be present if not for, you know, folks impeding traffic, folks impeding law enforcement, folks impeding the things that are going on there. There are other cities where this is happening, and we're not seeing the news stories because local law enforcement are in cooperation, local mayor's office, governors are in cooperation, and you're not seeing the same, you know, explosion because of that. And so, and here's the reality, and this makes people uncomfortable, but if you go back to 2020, and I if I'm not mistaken, it was Minneapolis, where the young kid went with an AR to protect a family business. There was a skirmish, and he ended up shooting and killing a rioter, a protester. And what did the left say? Well, if he just wouldn't have been there with his gun, this would have never happened. And guess what I said at that moment? Yeah, you're right. Like,
right.
These things are things, and they're stuff, and it's awful that buildings are being burned and places are being looted. But that's why we have insurance. That's why we have other things. Now, are there going to be times where we must step up? I think yes. I don't think we're there, but I do think there are times where you have to. And there's been times in our past, even in our society, in our country, where there was grave injustice being done, and people stood up. I just think we're not being honest, and it is showing great division in our country. But here's the thing too: if you're listening to this, this makes a lot of people uncomfortable too. even if you don't know the name that Sean just mentioned, and you don't know what's happening in Minneapolis, that's okay too. Like I feel like we're in a
Yes.
place now where it's like, what do you mean you don't know about the riots? What do you mean you don't know about the protests? And it's like, yeah, I mean, because if you went and asked my wife right now, she wouldn't have a clue who you were talking about. And
Michelle
here's the
too.
reality: my wife has 6 kids, and is got a lot of other things on her mind than those things. And that doesn't make her any less American. It doesn't make her any less Christian. It doesn't make her, you know, any less pro life. I think even in the pro life movement, there were times where I would go and I would get so angry, and my wife reminded me, like, hey, that pastor is carrying a lot of burdens, and just because your biggest burden isn't number one on his list doesn't mean he doesn't care. It just
Right.
means it's not number one on his list. And it's like, when she told me that, I was like, oh, well, yeah, that's a great point. Uh, now get back to making me a salmon. No, I'm kidding. I didn't say that. But I think those are things that we have to get to a place of going, I don't have to know everything. I don't have to have a publicist. I don't have to have a statement on everything, but I'm going to call out nonsense when it's nonsense. I'm going to say the, like, rational thing that, yeah, what would I instruct my kids to do in that scenario? I would say, don't go. What would I instruct my brothers to do? I would say, yeah, probably not a good idea. When Roe was overturned, my face was on the front page of the Knox News Sentinel, the biggest paper in Knoxville. Front page, front fold. You went into every gas station. My face is there, like the whole front page
Right.
about Roe being overturned. Guess where we didn't go the next few weekends? Downtown Knoxville, where there were protests.
Yeah.
Why? Because my wife was like, yeah, probably not a good idea. And I was like, yeah, because if somebody says something, I'm going to not handle that well. So, yeah, I'm just not going to go. And that's okay. It doesn't make me less pro life. It doesn't make me, make it out like I care less. I have to think about all of those things.
Right.
And I think we are letting the anger and vitriol of social media spill out into real world. When it's housed in social media, there's very little real world consequences. But when it spills out, we're seeing the consequences. And we can, and now, even, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this. Now there's AI images. We had a senator stand uh in front of folks with an AI image. It's not even a real image.
The guy didn't have a head.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a real image. And now you have MSNBC, you have the White House, you have different people doctoring photos
Yes.
to make someone look better or worse. And I'm
Yes.
like, y'all, this is not sustainable.
Right. And what's really interesting is I have seen I don't watch the clips anymore of the protests because I know there's so much AI. But I've seen AI images clearly from both sides. But today I read something that somebody on the I don't even want to say they're on the left. They object to what's going on in Minneapolis and ICE, right? So they support the protesters. And I don't know what their political affiliation is outside of that. And they said they just listed all these things the government is doing with AI images, and I was like, so is the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
They're all
the
doing it.
issue, and that's the reason that we need to come back to having conversations, and in having those conversations, while certainly it's acceptable to be emotional about things that we genuinely care about, at some point we have to remove the emotion and and have the rationality and have the logic that's behind it, and I get accused many times of being callous, because there's times when I probably should be more empathetic and more emotional, towards people, and I'm just like, say factual statements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't mean that I don't care. It just means when we're looking at a situation, it's okay to look at it objectively and to think about the logic and the reason and the rationality behind it, And I don't want I hate that Alex Peretti is dead. Like I hate that. Even if he pulled a gun, which it doesn't appear that he did, I hate that he's dead. Right? Like I don't want. I value the life of every person, and I don't want people to die in these situations. if he wasn't there, he would not be dead.
And two, just because you're not there doesn't mean you don't care about what's happening to your
That's right.
neighbors. Like, and I think that's uh, the reality is when these things occur, there are folks that are well-meaning, that it's in their community and they want to step in. But when it grows to the level that it is now, those are no longer local folks. Many of those folks are not local. They have been bussed in. And that's just the reality. That's how these things operate.
Yeah.
And it makes people uncomfortable, or you can call it a conspiracy or whatever, but that's just how this works. And so when you do that, and I've been in those scenarios where I remember when I was in high school, uh, we were playing baseball. We went away. We came back, and our vehicles had been messed with by some folks. Nothing major, just messed with. You know how kids do. So we messed with their vehicles when they went to their ball game. And then when I came back by later that day, there were cops around the cars, and the back windshield of one of those vehicles had been busted out. Well, after we left and thought, hey, we just got them back, no harm, no foul, some other guys came back and threw a desk through the back windshield of one of those cars. Well, guess what? I was part of that, even though I wasn't there and I had nothing to do with throwing that. I made myself a part of it when I was a part of that group. And so this is just like, and what did my mama say to me? Yeah, you're an idiot. What are you doing? This was, you thought it was funny, and look what happened. Then cops came and talked to us at school, and our coaches, and all these things. Why? Because I would have never done that alone, but as a group, we felt emboldened, and so we're seeing that occur on a much larger scale in things like this. And so what I hate to see is when, whether it's any large city where people are impeding traffic, and families are just trying to go get their kids, and they're like, I don't have a dog in the fight, just let me go, and I got to get somewhere. And so you create this animosity between folks, and it just goes deeper and deeper, and then it festers, and then we see this occur, and you see them walk inside of a church, and protest a church and yell at a pastor, and all these things. And Don Lemon, claiming to be a journalist while he's, not allowing a church to go about their day of worship. Like,
Right.
these are things that if conservatives did that in a mosque, Don Lemon would have lost his mind. You see how crazy all of this is? Like, this is just, again, we need to be able to look at this with clear eyes and go, this is not the way forward. This is not sustainable. And I think bringing it back to, why are we talking about this? Because we're seeing the beginnings of this festering division inside the pro-life movement. And if we're not careful, we're going to see the fruit of that, and it's not going to be good.
Yeah. Yes. And it just like the division in the country is getting in the way of us moving forward as a country and as a people. Because look, the people that I haven't talked to for 15 years from law school, like, they're good people, which is why I know that I can say, how would you lead your family and friends? Like, and I finally, when he wouldn't answer, I was like, I can see that I don't know the answer, and I'm not going to judge you no matter what you say. But of course, he answered that he wouldn't lead them into a war zone, and I believe that, because they're good people. It's not. That's the thing. Like, 99% of people are good people, and they believe that, and that number is completely made up. So don't hold me to it. But they believe that. What
from a
theological
standpoint, everybody's bad. But I get what you're saying. Yes, yeah. From
99% of people are bad people, and we're just working to bring them all back to Jesus.
Yes, exactly.
But I mean, people aren't all nefarious, and not everyone you talk to on social media is real. Like, I have caught myself getting into conversations way too long with bots, and finally figured it out after I've wasted time and energy and emotion. And so just like the AI, like it's all just crazy, man. And so then the idea is, how do we de-escalate so that we can move forward? How do we de-escalate in Minnesota? How do we de-escalate in the country as a whole? How do we de-escalate in the pro-life movement so that we can move forward? Because, like you said, we don't want to see the fruits of division, right? Like, we want to end abortion, and that's going to be the goal of these conversations, is to figure out how do we end abortion. And another thing, just on Abby's speech and the things that she's been saying, that many of them she reiterated on Seth Gruber's
Yeah.
podcast on one day this week. Um, I disagree with the idea that everyone in the pro life movement doesn't want abortion to end. I get the cynicism, um, because we live in a cynical society, but I believe that everyone in the pro life movement wants abortion to end. If I am proven wrong, then I can accept that I was wrong. But that is the heart with which I have to move forward in this, in order to get anything done. And so that's the
Yeah, I
goal.
think I think the I think another way of saying that is, I think, again, this is, we all can, I can be the most cynical dude out there, so I have to be careful. But but I think I think most people mean well. They want to see it end. I do think there's some folks that truly don't believe it will ever be possible, and so they kind of find themselves going through the motions on some things. Uh, and I mean, I've seen this in the political world. We saw this specifically in Knoxville. A state senator voted in favor of, was pro-life, voted in favor of a trigger law that if and when Roe's overturned, we would outlaw abortion in Tennessee. Once all of that unfolded and happened, he literally went on the news and said, "Well, I voted for that because I never thought it would actually happen. Now I want to rewind the clock." And I'm like, "Okay, you told me everything I needed to know in that statement." And so now I don't think that's the majority of folks. I think those are few and far between. But I do think there's an opportunity for us now, and I think we're seeing it. People reaching out to you, people reaching out to me, conversations we're having, phone calls I'm going to get on when we're done recording today, because people are wrestling with it, and are trying to and see it coming. And so, okay, if we see it coming, and I think I even texted you and said, look, some of these folks have been in the fight, and frankly, they deserve the benefit of the doubt until
Yep.
we're proven otherwise. Uh, and so because I think they've earned that.
Right.
Now over time, have their viewpoints shifted on a couple things? Well, my viewpoints have shifted on a couple things, and so I'm not going to throw shade because somebody shifts now. But again, we don't know that until we have those conversations and sit in rooms, not just on podcasts, but behind closed doors, to really talk it out and figure out, okay, again, what's the way forward? How can the uh, the big players, the big platforms in this movement work together to ultimately reach our goal? They're all going to have a different lane. I mean, they're just going to have a different lane, and so we have to understand. Okay, if I start veering into that lane and that's not my expertise, then I need to make a phone call of who has that expertise. It's just like when folks come into Tennessee or anywhere, and they're speaking on behalf of pregnancy centers, and I'm like, yeah, but you haven't spoke to pregnancy centers, so don't speak on my behalf. Like, and we saw that in Tennessee, and so we made phone calls and made sure that, hey, next time, like, that's our lane. We know this stuff. Come talk to us. And then if something is in your lane, we'll reach out to you. I think having that open line of communication is what's going to ultimately move the movement forward. And I would love to hear more folks say, uh, like you were saying earlier, like my goal every day is that it would be ended. Um, and so what do I need to do today to make that a better reality?
Yeah.
Um, and so, those are when I took my job at the pregnancy center back in 2015, I sat down with my wife and I said, one day, if we raise our kids right, they're going to ask us, what were you doing while 3,000 babies were being aborted every single day? And I said, up to this point, our answer was we put a sticker on a car, we voted, and maybe gave it lip service outside of that. And I said, but if I take this job, we can look our kids in the eye and say, Daddy got up every day to see that abortion would be ended and those women and families would be served well. And so that has been my marching orders since 2015. And and my prayer is that when I'm on my deathbed and our kids are reading our eulogy, that they can say, and isn't it cool that our dad had a part in ending it and it's
Yes.
ended? Not that, and he laid the foundation for
Right.
100 more years. No, like we had a part in seeing it ended. And I mean, that should be the goal.
We have a mutual friend. I won't share his name just because I didn't ask him if I could, but who sent me an email and he mentioned that when he got into the pro life movement in the '90s, that there were people at the conferences and at the events, his words, strutting around, knowing that with pride that they had been in the pro life movement longer than anyone else.
Mhm.
And he said, I always thought that was weird. Like, don't we want this to end?
Yeah.
Do you want to be the guy who has been so ineffective at his job? And this isn't what he said. So this is me just kind of
Right.
adding my cynicism to it. That you're still doing it and you haven't succeeded. And what he was really saying was, to take out my cynicism, was, wouldn't it be cool? And this is my thought, man. Like, look, God is blessing me with the opportunity to go and speak this year, and I believe that's going to roll into even more opportunity next year, because I'm talking about things that not many other people are talking about,
Mhm.
and it's a new thing and it's exciting. And if we can get more men involved, then that benefits everybody. But I'm not betting my retirement on speaking at pro-life events for the next 20 years. Like that's not going to happen, because abortion is going to end, right? And that's why if I didn't mention this the last week, that's why I looked at Men for Life and said, let's focus on biblical masculinity, because with biblical masculinity, yeah, it's huge in helping abortion to end. But then when abortion's over, we can continue moving forward to the next issue,
Right.
right? And because men leading is always going to be important, and I want abortion to be gone in the next couple of years. I want abortion to be gone today, but I want it to be gone quickly, and to work so hard to build an organization that will be defunct because it is no longer necessary would be hard to wake up and do every day. So how do I build something that will still go beyond abortion ending, and because I want it to end, and
Well, and
I know you want it to end too.
you even think about, for decades we were told, oh, there's no way they'll ever overturn Roe. There's no way, laws will be passed in different states, and they're like, uh, there's no reason that the Supreme Court will take it up. If they do take it up, they're going to rule against us. We saw it in Casey versus Planned Parenthood in the '90s, and that was like that might get it, and it didn't get it. And then you fast forward, and some things fell in place. We get the Supreme Court justices, the appointments to happen, and and then the Dobbs decision comes, and Roe is overturned. Like, I don't want to speak for the folks that were involved in writing that legislation, but you got to think, even though that wasn't the end, I think their goal was Roe to be overturned, right? I mean, that was That's the goal. They accomplished that. And so now we accomplished that. Now the next thing has to be, okay, we've now set the stage for states to do what they want to do. We're still seeing abortion be rampant. The numbers actually haven't decreased; they've increased. And so, what does that mean? And the abortion pill after 2020 became readily available. And so, what does that mean? What do we got to do to correct that? But the reality is, we have to. The only way that happens is if multiple folks, multiple legs of the stool is coming together and having uh, those conversations
Yes.
from a advocacy political standpoint, from a ministry nonprofit standpoint, from a educational standpoint. How are we educating folks about what abortion is, the abortion pill reversal? How are we raising up new leaders within the pregnancy center movement to take the lead as folks are retiring and then how are we getting the brightest minds from a policy standpoint to craft legislation in different states that will do the thing we want it to do? Like that has to be, and all of those uh, orgs have to talk to each other. And I'm not saying have a one time a year, a few 100,000 people come together. I'm not saying that. I'm saying talk to each other on a regular basis. Where, hey, here's what I'm working on. How could that help you? Here's what we're working on. How could that help you? And oh, you're working on this film. That film might be good for us to show here. Oh, you're working on that policy. Maybe I need to show that to my contacts in my state so that we can move it down the road there. Oh, you're doing some great tax incentives in Florida. Maybe we need to do that in our state to celebrate and help families flourish. Like all of these organizations should be talking to each other, not talking about each other because you're not doing it the way I think you should do it. And look, I've been guilty of that too. I'm sure there's people that might watch this and go, yeah, pot calling the kettle black. Like I've been guilty of it. But I think if we have to get to a place where we're willing. I'm at the age now, if you give me your phone number, guess what? You're going to hear from me until you block me or change the number. That's just the reality. And so when people say, let me know if you ever need anything, guess what I do? I reach out. And it may be just that, hey, I'm praying for you, but it may be, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
How can we, the other day there was some legislation coming up in Tennessee having to do with something that I'm passionate about outside of the pro-life movement. And I immediately started texting contacts that I have. Why? Because I care about it and they will care about it. And they have more influence than I do to get something done. So are we willing to sit down with those folks and go, here's what's working. How can I help? Or, hey, I saw that and I don't think that's working. Actually, here's what it's telling my people. Can we talk about it? Can we adjust? Can we come together, come to an agreement on it? I just think that's not asking too much, but it does require all of us, me included, to put our ego on the shelf, and that's hard. So
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a great place to end because I think that just bringing it back to the conversations, the opposing viewpoints aren't necessarily evil people. That if we don't have conversations, then we will always be, walking on 15 different paths. And while at some point, if we're walking on 15 different paths, we may converge.
mhm.
Wouldn't it be better if we could at least be so parallel to each other, if we're not on the same path, that we can see each other and continue to have the conversations, and not be working in opposition of each other, when really what we all want is the same thing. And so that's going to be the goal. I'm sure that you and I are going to talk about this more because it's something that's happening and it's important.
Yeah.
And and we're both very similar in the thought that we both want to end abortion. We both want for people to come together, and we want these conversations to happen. And so hopefully in the Men for Life podcast series, what should the pro life movement want? That hopefully we're able to get these opposing views together, and that not only the people come on and give me their view, but that they also listen to the views of the other people, so that
Hmm.
we can work together. I made it I made a joke to Brandy Meeks, our friend who runs the Vitae Foundation, that maybe what God's calling me to do now that everybody's either accusing me of taking the other side or their own side, is to help bring people together, and maybe God just wants me to get everybody and it's a leader in the pro-life movement, lock them in a room and say, no one's leaving until we solve this. And she said like a pro-life escape room. And said she's sending that idea to her friend Seth Dillon with the Babylon Bee. So if you see that as an episode or as an article in the Babylon Bee, please know that it was my idea first.
That's right. That's right.
I told her Seth can take all the credit if he'll agree to let me interview him.
Yeah, that'd be great. No,
Cool,
I think it's good stuff, and we'll keep plugging along. This is what we've been called to do.
Amen. All right, man. Well, have a great day. Have fun with that family, and good luck with those conversations, bringing people together.
Yes, sir.
All right. Talk to you later.